Mary Catherine Ham, Brian Wilson, Brian Neiman, today's newsmakers, and you, the Morning Majority.
8:37 on WMAL. The Bryans are in today. Mary Catherine's a little bit on the weather, but she'll be back tomorrow. Larry Kudlow joins us now, host of the Kudlow Report on CNBC. You can check him out 7 p.m. on CNBC. Also hosts the Larry Kudlow radio show Saturdays at 7 o'clock here on WMAL. And that was kind of a hot show this weekend, Larry. On the radio show, a little roundtable with Jimmy P. Steve Moore was there. The discussion on Newt Gingrich. He had some pretty strong opinions about Newt Gingrich and his view of capitalism.
I think everybody has strong opinions about Newt Gingrich, but Newt's a guy with pluses and minuses, but I've not been able to forgive him for his assault on Bain Capital and what I believe to be an assault on free market capitalism. I think it was just badly put together, and whatever good he thinks it may have done him in the short run, I think it did a lot of damage to his credibility longer term.
All right. At the debate last night, they got into Medicare Part D, and Newt, said that he supported it and he's completely behind it. I'm just curious, is that a case that you're talking about where whatever new idea comes around that Newt Gingrich will just embrace and, try and sell it and has the ability to sell it because he's such a strong a debater, arguer, however you want to put it?
Well, the problem, I thought that Romney had a great debate last night. I thought he cleaned Gingrich's clock, especially in the first half hour. Then things sort of settled down after that. But I think Newt's got a lot of explaining to do regarding his relationship with Freddie Mac and also some other issues that popped up, but I thought Romney came out guns blaring. The rest of the debate was kind of boring. On Medicare Part D, look, there were some good things in that bill, and I agree with Gingrich about health savings accounts are in that bill and the Advantage program, which is more of a free market choice program. I agree with that.
Okay.
The problem with it is it was never paid for.
Right.
It was one of the George W. Bush entitlements, including No Child Left Behind, that wasn't paid for. And I've always felt that Republicans, and now we're not talking presidential politics, all the Republican parties suffered enormously in its fiscal credibility by backing an entitlement that wasn't paid for. And that, I don't know how you get around that. Rick Santorum was for it, too, as he's acknowledged in the debates earlier. I don't know how you get around that.
All right. Now, you say you have concerns with some of the things that Newt Gingrich said about Bain Capital and what you saw as an assault against free market capitalism. And yet tonight we hear that the president's speech is going to be on economic fairness. Mm-hmm. What do you think he means by economic fairness?
Bashing free market capitalism. He's going to bash rich people. He's going to use this left-wing populism, raise taxes on the rich. They don't pay their fair share, which statistically is not true. The wealthy people have the highest percentage of income tax payment. I think you're going to see big tax and spend coming out of Obama today. And, it goes back to his whole critique of the 1% versus the 99%, which he adopted from the Occupy Wall Street crowd. I think it goes back to his speech in Kansas. And, I interviewed Republican leader Mitch McConnell last night.
Right.
And I said, can you work with this guy? Can you play ball with this guy? And he said, no, not if he's going to pull that again. He said, we were tired of it last year, and we're tired of it this year, and nothing major is going to get done as long as Obama has a confrontational attitude. And doesn't, you have, let's face it, in Washington, D.C., and you could say for better or worse, but I think for better, you basically have a political consensus in favor of the Simpson-Bowles outline, if not all the details, certainly the outline. Deep spending cuts, regulation rollback, tax reform, entitlement reform. That has been a bipartisan movement now ever since, when did they put that out? It's about late 2010, right?
Yeah.
So it's over a year, and you have people coalescing around that, and yet the president and the Democratic leadership do not embrace it. They never have. So nothing gets done. The business community wants Simpson-Bowles. The financial community wants Simpson-Bowles. Why is it we don't get a Simpson-Bowles? The answer is President Obama doesn't want to go there. He has dissed his own commission. That was the single best help for big picture entitlement reform and spending reform and tax reform. So I just do not understand how you're going to get anything done until we go back to that very sensible. Look, Mitt Romney is basically campaigning on Simpson Bowles.
But
that's the basis of his campaign.
There are a lot of Republicans who don't like Simpson Bowles, though, because they believe it raises taxes.
I don't agree with you. I think that is not true. There's a difference between tax revenues and tax rates. And the Republican Party was basically ready to embrace an elimination or a sharp curtailment of the special deductions and carve-outs in the tax code that were put there years ago when marginal rates were too high. Now, marginal rates aren't near where they were 30 years ago or 20 years ago. And if you lowered the marginal rates to something on the order of magnitude of 10, 15, and 24, which is what Simpson Bowles is, you don't need these deductions. Or put it another way, you can limit the deductions, particularly the upper-end deductions, which will help pay for the lower marginal rate. The incentive effect on the extra dollar earned does not come from the deduction. It comes from the marginal tax rate. That's the growth component. And until people can get that into their thick skulls, we're never going to see the light of day on tax reform. And don't forget, probably the single biggest coalition consensus in Simpson Bowles is the corporate tax. I mean, Obama's own Jobs Council once again put on the table reform of the corporate tax, which is not competitive with any place in the world. Why aren't we getting this done? Because of class warfare and class envy.
All right.
And for one moment, Newt Gingrich embraced that with his language and rhetoric pounding against private equity firms. If Newt backs off that, then I'm fine with it. But so far, I'm very suspicious that he's using the language of Obama. And that's why, if I can tie this package together, that's why I was so critical of him.
All right. On your conversation with Mitch McConnell last night,
Right.
Obviously he basically said there's no way we can work with Barack Obama this year. Not a lot is going to get done. Is that such a bad thing? Is that bad overall for the economy? And number two, I guess maybe for the stock market, but for the economy as well, if nothing gets done this year?
Well, I don't think it has to be a bone crusher. But I want to warn on that. It's funny, we talked about this. I had two stock market guys, and we talked about State of the Union politics. Remember last year, the stock market sold off substantially when the deficit talks broke down, when the debt ceiling talks broke down, including a 500-point drop when it was on Obama's own birthday, as I recall. And then later on, that was in the early summer, and then later on in the year, when the super committee talks broke down and they had to go to the trigger, and the trigger wasn't all that great, we had another sell-off in the stock market. So, history teaches that it did hurt because people believe that if we don't solve the deficit problem, then you're going to have a major hike in tax rates, which will stagnate the economy further. And, of course, that's bad for stocks, and that would be bad for profits. So there is a linkage here. It's not something that's just off in, airy fairyland and has no connection to the market. It does have a connection to the market. The dollar is affected adversely by the failure to make any financial reform or the failure to make any tax reform. I mean, I've interviewed so many guys. I got Democrats in Colorado. I got Democrats in West Virginia. I got Democrats in Delaware that have come on my show, senators, and said that they would be happy to go into a reasonably good package